Hi, you're welcome. Today we are going to learn about cubes and cube roots. The cube of a number refers to the number multiplied 3 times by itself. For example, the cube of 2 is 2 times 2 times 2 giving us 8, and the cube of 5 is 5 times 5 times 5 giving us 125. To represent this mathematically, it is written as 5 cubed is equals to 125. You can take a moment and pause the video to calculate the value of the following. If your answers are 343 and 1000, then you did it right. Calculating the cubes of numbers is very easy as far as they are whole numbers, small or multiples of 10. Solving the cubes of larger numbers or numbers with decimal places, however, is not that easy. That is why we need to learn the use of the following two methods. One is easy and the other one is a little bit handy, but still useful. The two methods are the use of a mathematical table and the use of a calculator. Using a calculator is faster and easier. You simply click in the number and cube it. If the answer obtained has many digits after the decimal point, you pick the first 4 digits. One thing to remember, however, if the next digit is greater or equal to 5, then you should round up your answer. But if the next digit was less than 5, then you should round down your answer. The second method, on the other hand, involves reading the cubes of numbers from a mathematical table. It is useful to know how to use a math table because you might be needed to use one when doing an exam. So let us learn how we can use one to find the cubes of numbers. The first thing is to locate the page written cubes on top. This page is divided into 3 major sections. At the far left, we use this column to read the number we want to find its cube. For example, if we want to calculate the cube of 3.6, then we track down along this column to find where we see 3.6. The second section is made up of columns whose numbers are in 4 digits. That is why some people refer a math table as a 4-figure. This section gives you the cubes you are looking for. For example, the cube of 3.6 is 46.66. Or let's say you are looking for the cube of a number such as 3.68. After tracking down 3.6, you move across these columns in the second section until you reach the 8th one. It is even indicated at the top and bottom so that you can identify it easily. And the number you obtain becomes the cube of 3.68. Let us try another example that has even more digits after the decimal place. What is the cube of 5.265? The first thing is to identify where 5.2 is. Then slide along the columns until you get to the 6th one. The value here is 145.53. But we still have one more digit, that is 5, and this is where the final section becomes useful. So in this last section, you slide along until you reach the 5th column. Alternatively, using your 2 index fingers, place the first finger at 5.26 and the second index finger at 5 in the last section. Now slide either of the fingers until they are perfectly in line with each other. This section is numbered at the top or bottom to make it easier for you. The number we get here is 5 and we add it to the previous one. But before we do the wrong thing, here is the rule of how we do this kind of addition. Instead of adding them as usual before the decimal place, we add them after the decimal place like this. And the final answer gives us the cube of 5.265. We can do another example together on this so that you can understand it better. Find the value of 7.893 cubed. We locate 7.8, then head directly to where 9 is located and note down the value. And then head on to 3 and add this value to the first value. The answer we get is the cube of 7.893. Sometimes we can be asked to find the cube of a number greater than 10 using a mathematical table. And this is how we go about that kind of equation. Using a mathematical table, what is the value of 45.63 cubed? The first step here is to express the digit in standard form. What is standard form? Someone is asking that. Well, standard form is simply writing a number by changing the place of the decimal point so that the first digit before the decimal point falls between 1 and 9. The place of the decimal point is then preserved by multiplying the number by a certain multiple of 10. For example, to express 326.7 in standard form, move the decimal point to the left twice. 3 falls between 1 and 9. Now multiply this by 10 to the power of 2 because you moved the decimal point twice. If you moved it thrice, you would multiply by 10 to the power of 3, and if you moved it 4 times, you would have multiplied by 10 to the power of 4, and so on. Now let us get back to our example. What is the value of 45.63 cubed? Writing this in standard form becomes 4.563 times 10 to 1 everything cubed. To easily understand the next step, we write this as 45.63 cubed multiplied by 10 cubed. Now head on to the table and locate 4.5. Slide on to where 6 is located and note down that number. Continue and read the value of 3. Add these 2 digits without forgetting the rule. Now you have 95.01 times 10 to 3. 10 to 3 is the same as 1000, and the final answer is 95,010. When you do this with a calculator, you get the answer is 95,006.08. That is why it is important to read the instructions so as to avoid missing something. I would advise you to watch this part again to make sure you get the most out of it. But if you're okay, let's move on. Suppose you are required to find the cube of a number less than 1. For example, use a math table to find the value of 0.0234 cubed. We again express 0.0234 cubed in standard form, and this is how we do it. Move the decimal point twice, now multiply the number by 10 to -2. Someone asks, why -2? Well, because we move the decimal point towards the right. Whenever you move a decimal point to the right, the power of 10 becomes a negative. For example, if you had moved the decimal point once to the right, the power would have become -1. And if you would have moved it 3 times, the power would have become -3, and so on. So our example becomes 2.34 cubed times 10 to the -2, everything cubed. 2.34 cubed on a mathematical table is this. 10 to the power of -2 cubed is the same as 10 to -6. And this is our final answer. Again, be free to replay that section of the video to get the best out of it. So, to summarize it all about cubes, the cube of a number is a number multiplied by itself 3 times. It is expressed as n cubed. You can find the value of a cube using direct multiplication or a calculator, or you can also use the mathematical table. Remember, if a question requires you to use a math table, you are expected to use one. Sometimes the calc and the table do not always give the answer. You might be penalized for not following instructions. But teacher, why should we do all that work of opening, looking and tracking down a math table, stringing on those small figures, yet we can just press a calculator and life goes on? Well, I actually don't know. Does anyone here have a solution for that? Please put it down in the comments below, and thanks for asking. That was brave. Now let us talk about cube roots. A cube root of a number refers to another number that when multiplied 3 times by itself will lead to that number. What I mean is, if you have a number 8, the cube root of 8 is another number that when multiplied by itself 3 times will give us 8. And for our case that happens to be 2. 2 multiplied by itself 3 times gives us 8. To express this mathematically, we say the cube root of 8 is equals to 2. You can simply calculate the cube root of a number on a calculator by pressing the shift key, cube root, and then inputting the number. But to better understand how the cube root works, let us use a factorial tree to calculate the cube roots of several numbers. Use the factorial method to calculate the cube root of 125. So we find that 125 is 5 multiplied by itself 3 times. That means the cube root of 125 is the same as the cube root of 5 times 5 times 5, which gives us 5. Use the factorial method to calculate the cube root of 5832. So we find that 5832 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. The easiest way to go about this is to group the numbers into groups of 3. Therefore, the cube root of 5832 is given by 2 multiplied by itself 3 times 3 multiplied by itself 3 times multiplied by 3 multiplied by itself 3 times. And the answer is 18. So far, so good, right? Let us now calculate some complex examples. Evaluate the cube root of 27 over 64. So, starting with the numerator, 27 is the same as 3 times 3 times 3, while the denominator 64 is the same as 4 times 4 times 4. Therefore, the cube root of 27 over 64 is the same as 3 over 4. What is the cube root of 0.064 times 125 everything over 343? Well, 0.064 on our calculator is the same as 0.4 times 0.4 times 0.4, while 125 is the same as 5 times 5 times 5. 343 on the other hand is the same as 7 times 7 times 7. So that gives us 0.4 times 5 everything over 7, and the final answer is 2 over 7. We can also use math tables to calculate the cube roots of numbers, but let us preserve this for the next video. Important stuff to keep. To calculate the cube root of a number in a calculator, press Shift key plus cube root, then enter the number. This will save you a lot of time and energy. When using a factorial tree to solve for cube roots, always group the factors into groups of 3 and ensure the 3 are alike. For your own practice, find the value of each of the following. Once you are done or you need help in solving them, head down to the link in the description below. I have started a WhatsApp community just for us. You will get to interact with like-minded people, get questions plus answers with correct working, bullet notes, and other revision materials for physics, chemistry, and biology. And here is why you should not hesitate. All this is for free. What stands between you and excellence now? Be among the first to join this community and make the best out of it. A cautious to put across. If you suspect that you're going to engage in abusive or irrelevant business, don't consider joining the group.